and hatred for enemies. Từ nay cho đến ngày giác ngộ, con xin nguyện quay về nương tựa nơi Phật, Pháp và Tăng, hội chúng tối thượng, bằng sự thực hành bố thí và các hạnh tuyệt hảo bao la mật khác. Nguyện con sẽ thành Phật để làm lợi lạc tất cả chúng sinh. Nguyện tất cả chúng sinh có được hạnh phúc và nhân của hạnh phúc. Nguyện tất cả chúng sinh thoát khỏi khổ đau và nhân của khổ đau. Nguyện tất cả chúng sinh không xa lìa an lạc mà thoát khỏi khổ đau. Nguyện tất cả chúng sinh an trụ trong tâm bình đẳng, không bám luyến bằng hữu, không sân hận kẻ thù. Sangye cho tăng cho kê cho nam chẳng cho ni kiếp sâu chê đại chúng có về do nam ghê cho la bên cho sangye du ba so xem cho chúng chê xem cho This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 5 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as the Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Mặt đất này được trang nghiêm với dầu thơm và trải đầy hoa, tô điểm với núi Tu Di, tứ đại bộ châu, mặt trời và mặt trăng. Con tưởng tượng nơi đây là cõi Phật và xin cúng dường. Nguyện tất cả chúng sinh được an hưởng cõi tịnh độ này. Sa ye po ge chúng sinh toàn toàn re ra lên sa Idam Yurana Mandalaka Nirya Saya Mi.
Ôi, thế à, chứ trong các bạn xem về làm cho nằm xuống lại đó, ở đó làm cho nằm xuống lại, còn đó sĩ bê để làm mà sao xin sao, còn đó sĩ bê để làm mà sao xin sao, kiểu còn đó sĩ bê khóe để làm mà sao xin xuống cái đó, thế cái 기본 전기 라버리 땡기 요소를 다 된저 자네 자이와 시베테 와라 마샤브세 시바 코알레 탐디치요라 파다 밀레 소바테조 레다 녀모베 왕기 껴알랑 신제들레 시바시고라 시바시도 코라레시고라 레다 녀모기 샤마도 큐르나니 껴와 끼치치라 라메바 제고반데 쟁네바도 시바레세 탄다다 벽에나서 시바스 타고도 간다 시베테라 마샤시네세 이 기분 전기 남되기도 와. 근데 시베텔라 마샤시. 덴저르 때에 자세를 좀 봐야지도. 덴저르게 밀리 토반디시고라. 아니 덴저 때에 자세를 좀 봐야지. 덴저게 밀리 토반디. 단단된바. 덴여 봐야지도. 좀 봐야지도. 기부 중국에 덴저 밀리 디짱짱 그 단단 멤버스 겨와치마 펜스 단단 주고도 와. 하다 메테와. 기분 전개에 대두고로 기분 첨부에나 하다 메껴마 톱나 아니 그 가르소래 심제 탐제부터 쭉쭉 말도 담보 근데 그 다시 되게 좀 말까지 가서래 간다 시베들라 마샤시 댄저 댄 자세를 좀 봐야서 되게 기분 충분 기분 다 통만 출신게 되시거라 기분 충분 남지 좀 버텨겨 그래서 중국단 정식이라 남주전이 중국단 정식이래 딩스리 충무게 장고열에 딩게 장고열은 오늘신 첨부게 장고라 숨가게 교와 침망에 손을 맞을하다 미때와 두벨 미교와 주방 교와 주투에 되다 강가 좀 구겨라 저장 코트모아를 지대거라 Quando si vede la massage, tengi te c'è somebody. Kya gebe lam la yiten base. Kya gebe lam sede kibu chimbe lam tagbe shenji be chanju semde. Soso le pe shanda ke chawachine shenji te bashi tumge chanju semba to songora. O chanju sem kesne kibu chimbo se yoba. Kya gebe lam la yiten base. Choji kya saje tamge kanga to kendo yora. O ta ko be samlo chibu gebche. Tarvatoveata tamje chimbe kumbal brege dango tsusun samkungura toma mevane sosu chanja samde mado oya tenji kawa kebe lamla yitemba den ta tawe yinyese kawa dan dembe tuchete ta niga lamzu namsun kole shegini tini deba da chedi apuchen yesho songudwa ya mada so oya
Here, as J. Lama Tsongkhapa teaches at the beginning of his 3 principles of the path, he says, those who are not attached to the joys of cyclic existence, those who strive to make meaningful this life of leisure and opportunity, and who place their trust in the path that pleases the conquerors, O fortunate ones, listen with an open heart. So here, this first line, who says, those who are not attached to the joys of cyclic existence, refers to the beings of middling scope, who, looking at, even if one is born as a human or a god, one is under the control, has taken birth due to the force of karma and the afflictions. And so from the point of being born, one is experiencing suffering. So that wish to be free from this cycle of existence, when we first take up a birth, this is called existence, and then one proceeds toward death, and again, cycling due to the force of karma and the afflictions. So here, the wish to be free from that, those who are not attached to the joys of cyclic existence, that is referring to the kind of training of the being of middling scope. And then where it says, who strive to make meaningful this life of leisure and opportunity, this is teaching the path, the sort of training of the being of small scope. And here, when we say this, we should recognize that these are all things that we need to train our mind in. The being of the small scope, the trainings for the being of middling scope, and of course that of the great scope. If we want to practice that dharma, we have to begin by the kind of training in the being of small scope, which means really that we have to begin by gaining a good rebirth, avoiding rebirth in the lower realms, getting a birth as a human or a god, by abandoning the 10 non-virtues, those kinds of paths that lead to such lower realms. And so here, where it says those who strive to make this life of leisure and opportunity meaningful, this is really referring to that beginner's path where we all need to begin, because this is the sort of common training. In order to be able to proceed on any of these paths, we have to gain a rebirth as a human or a god, wherein one can continue to practice. And so then the third line where it says, and who place their trust in the path that pleases the conquerors, this is referring to the training of great scope, wherein one exchanges a self-cherishing attitude for cherishing others. That is the kind of path that is pleasing to the Buddhas, the conquerors, that kind of exchanging of our normal self-cherishing attitude that we have been pursuing since beginningless time to instead cherish others. This starts the path towards omniscience.
Rồi thảo chưa sao đó nhưng tôi cũng biết sẽ tôi chỉ dùng cái xe mà được chứ đó chỉ biết chung sáng là sáu pan pan bát trong này cháu gì cái đó chỉ biết trên cái này sau đó nhớ một pan này thảo bắt tôi sẽ đó xong rồi tao như nào có cháu chỉ biết làm được rồi thì bây giờ đó chỉ biết sống cái rồi cháu chỉ biết làm đó thì ta có số đó chỉ biết chung cái rồi chỉ biết chung rồi ya nhìn chung cái sự nhau vậy đó toàn được cái là Gyalan Geshe Trane, Fadami, Teva Tomdiskuda. Camdo Sudan Chili, Cabez Kogara, Jigbach Kogara, Mendubach Kogara, Ran the government, men of some sort, the man to Tapshichora. Càng lên chỉ sĩ trả bản chỉ bớt sao mà càng lên mình được bị chết score ra. Ở đi ngang dung nghe số sum tira chỉ bớt chung ok. Ở đi đi rồi chỉ theo nào là sum cái đó. Anh ấy cả sẽ ra. Rabdu chashi chawai nyawa nima chashi tense. Chanye da chanye se yara nyawa li kena. Ya tsikwe da teni chamu se kyaani pe kyabwa kyamdwe tende yara. Chanye da chanye. Kesu nima chi ne shi ten sho songudwa. Rabdu chashi nyawa di tungye di nima chi shindu ten gure se ra. Ane rabdu chashi nyawa nima chi shi tense. Nima dagba tense so nga zu. Tekene yabu mi doa samko yara. No. En te chele tregum daga nyemba ye. Idal ke sona saye me kakum to tende se chigora ti chega do de ku yara mara de yara. Idag ne tregum delike ne tende tunga yara sam kala je saye me tunga me che na zo mile to shiten shinge de mamu yara. O te de. Tende ida de tengo re songora. Tendo lense temo paro. Ane tunga mamu yenge o te tawarisa stezo ngazu migi taya yora kora. Jine kangli yebe tendu mabu yorwa. Migi simse tobu karishene se ko rawa mega se chigi chigi sayada. Lenshi timu botani samlu tami shinge tezo tawarisa songudwa. Teche rawa migi takore songudwa. Ki temu tashi shingi omara. O tkonzu kange tende duwa asam. Raha tende si kebe nepe kange hingure asam. Raha ti tolu ke misiba marwa miti mi kyanjan ke. El del hakan que si marwa le na tiwan ki yute le ngamba sabun debu mendu ngamba ke wara sambu sendu sambu chigra o ya tichuna maunda marara.
So here, in particular, again, this finishes with saying, "Oh, fortunate ones, listen with an open heart." So those who have this kind of attitude. So here, in particular, where it says, "Who place their trust in the path that pleases the conquerors," what especially pleases the conquerors is having this kind of attitude of exchanging our self-cherishing for cherishing others. But here, this also, all of the paths are pleasing to the Buddhas in the sense of if we abandon harming others, abandon the 10 non-virtues in order to gain a good rebirth for ourselves, the kind of training of a being of small scope, this is also pleasing to the Buddhas, to the victors, or the conquerors. But this in particular is referring to the great path. So here, each of these beings, again, is seeking some kind of refuge. And when we're seeking refuge, that means that we're seeking protection from something that we fear, something that we don't want to have happen. So here, for the being of small scope, it is the suffering of the lower realms. Out of their fear of those sufferings, they don't want to be born there. They seek out the methods by which they are able to escape such a fate. So the Precious Garland by Nagarjuna says that we should recall sort of on a day-to-day basis the sufferings of the hot and the cold hells. So these aren't things that we can see, but we can imagine the kinds of sufferings that one would have to endure, freezing to death or being burned to death or those kinds of things. And the sufferings of hunger and thirst that are of hungry ghosts, these too we should keep in mind. We should recollect on a daily basis. I mean, these are sufferings that we can experience as humans, not being able to fill our stomachs, having this craving for food, or being starving. I mean, these are sufferings that humans can endure. And then we should look at animals as well in the suffering of their sort of stupidity and delusion, wherein they end up sort of killing one another. They get killed by humans, used by humans, and abused, unable to distinguish between what is right and wrong. So these are things where we can look at it, we can see those sufferings, and we shouldn't be observing it sort of like a movie, like something that's over there. We should recognize that it's not impossible that we could be born like that. It's not the case that humans are always born as humans and gods are always born as gods, but we follow after our karma. So if we create good causes, we will get a good rebirth. And if we create bad causes, we are going to have to suffer the consequences of that.
Để trở thành loài vật, tại vì những nghiệp ác mình đã tạo rất là nhiều, không bảo đảm gì mình không sinh vào những cái cõi thấp, chứ không phải là Mình con người thì sau này mình sẽ sinh lại con người, mình loài trời sau này sinh vào loài trời. Không cái gì mà để bảo đảm cho chúng ta sẽ tái sinh và cùng một cái tái sinh ở kiếp này. Tại vì nó phụ thuộc vào những cái hành động và nghiệp lực. Nếu chúng ta đã tạo những cái nghiệp ác thì chắc chắn sẽ bị quả báo khổ. Và nếu chúng ta làm những cái hành động lành sẽ được hạnh phúc ở đâu. Nên hãy quan sát ra thật kỹ và nghĩ rằng nếu như mình làm loài vật bị người ta chém giết, ngạ quỷ bị đói khát, hay là những địa ngục nóng, địa ngục lạnh, thì làm sao mình có thể chịu đựng được.
Nói như sao? Thì này sẽ gom bù lụt sĩ trên là xong cái đó. Ngàn rồi thằng đó nhiều là số bát trên đi sang cái sĩ bác kholo yêu đó. Sĩ bác kholo xem đó đi tu rimu ti sab dùng cái đó. Phật bát da chư da thì này chạy sẽ tu sĩ đó đi tu sĩ sab rồi. Thì này nhiều tu sĩ đã chỉ rimu tu sĩ đồng nghe sinh được trong nghe sinh mà bút rồi đó. Rồi rimu ti sab yêu bát da. Thì này mấy số xe bát da rồi. Thì này giờ để sẽ chăm bát tu 소설 때문에 소통만 도와줘라 달라. 등원에 레드 사네 사서는 소설 남이 연구하라. 등원에 연구를 연구 조선에 딜레자 강해를 봐서 그러라. 그래서 뒤삼을 땅고래 해서 그러와. 야, 뒤질라나.
So, similarly, the master Nagarjuna has said in his letter to a friend, we have the drawing of the wheel of existence, normally at the entrance of temples and so forth, depicting the 6 realms of existence. In the center, there's like the pig, the snake, and the chicken representing our 3 poisons and so forth. But these kind of depictions, drawings of the 6 realms, it's not often that they really like elicit fear in us, but we should be looking at them with the kind of sense that if we were to really take birth there, how very difficult it would be, how much we would have to endure. So we should regard those as like future possibilities for ourselves, not just as like a drawing.
Nhưng mà khi chúng ta vẽ cái cõi hữu và đặt ở trước chùa như vậy, mục đích là để cảnh báo rằng nếu chúng ta đã gây ra cái nghiệp gì thì mình sẽ tái sinh và nhận cái quả báo tương tự như vậy. Để chúng ta cảnh giác là mình đang làm gì và cái nghiệp nào mình đang gây để mình phải tái sinh vào cái cõi khổ đau của cõi địa ngục ngạ quỷ súc sinh.
야, 제 다들 탑시 가르쳐 그랬으나 순거라 내성을 맡기셔. 그래서 삼로 다나와 나한테 교함 레메 그거치긴 삼사잖아. 레 좀데 삼로다. 로 미게와 샬라 처에가 좀 남기셔와 샬라 처에 룡아 예수님 미게와 주도 봐. 아니 개와 주신의 유튜브. 근데 제가 들리기 말아. 랜드 인남사 추신도 채널로. 근데 가서래. 대체변에 들리기 말아. 자, 대접 탑시들 랜드 인남사 삼네. 삼국으로서 그 미개월에 동해다 서도 남주 미개월 때네 동해다 년도 탐지 연구하라. 개와사서나 아니 텐도다 대사마 대와사마데 개월 때 연구하라. 그디게 랜드가 랑돌이야. 아니 배구래서 랜드가 랑도도 야부주서 소이나 아니 그시 오토와르 시소에 쉬어라. 그런 미개 주방 개와 주디 야부시 좀나 nghe trên này kia như mà để sẽ trên nghe kia của sẽ bạn sẽ còn đó là nghe mà để sẽ là cái lẽ chúng tôi là sau khi chúng ta bị trên này anh em mình cái chỗ sẽ thế này mình để xem được Quran mà sẽ đâu ra chút thì sao sẽ đến được nhau gọi ra thì đi ra có số là tiếng kia sẽ xem như là sao bao temperature thì làm như này xong rồi thế nào ni shigala mola kevesem mad sem kigora kevesem gesuna nge massage be kevesem kevele to solo soita gora ti andi bacham sugora ane tendu madu nge so ke yo marwa oti diza ko namjune samlu tonda ane mambana teli ke mare se kira ke gusamne saga dona ra mare sorwa ati mane ni kusana ne medeshin de tendo wa shira ko so ra ke yo marwa tanto so ra yo de so do ya
phương pháp nào để chúng ta
So, as for the method not to be born in the lower realms, if we don't want to be born there, we can't just sort of wish for that, but rather by thinking about karma, by thinking about cause and effect, if we then abandon harming others, abandon non-virtue of our body, speech, and mind, the 10 non-virtues, and we act according to karma, we won't be born in the lower realms. So we need to contemplate the fact that there's a link between cause and effect, that karma means if we create non-virtuous actions, that is the source of all suffering and births in the lower realms. But our sort of happiness and good rebirths come from accumulating virtues. So here, the Geshe-ma has said that if we act properly according to karma and accumulate virtue and abandon non-virtue, then even if we search for the lower realms, we can't find it. We can't get there because we haven't accumulated the causes. So here we need to sort of put our trust in this, really place our confidence in our own actions of karma, cause and effect. If we need, at the time of death, it's very important to have a kind of virtuous attitude. It's especially important to try to sort of foster or nurture a virtuous attitude at the time of death. And if we have habituated ourselves to virtue throughout our life, that's much easier to do. So again, when it comes to if we have accumulated the sort of causes for a good rebirth and haven't accumulated the causes for a non-virtue, a negative kind of birth in the lower realms, then even if you search for it, you can't get there. But if you've accumulated the causes, you have to take rebirth without any sort of control. You have no ability to avoid that fate. It all lies in the sort of causes that we have created.
Nên hiện tại mình đang có quyền lựa chọn, mình đang được tự do, cho nên chúng ta sẽ chọn lựa và sẽ nên tái sinh vào đâu và phải nên làm những gì.
야, 잘 되었잖아. 다 되니까 서라. 기부 중국 시베 기부 중국에 민족들이하고 코 녀에다 단둘러 쏘고 된데 깨를 내반 정도도 될 게네 하고 매삼 될 내반 전에 아니 몇개 답시 치고도 답시 가르쳐서 단단하게 시에서 들려도 다 기분 등이라지네 그 민족들이 가르치고 그랬어도 녀에다 단둘 자자 말에 밀게나 깨가 나지 할게나 깨가 나지 렌지 밀게비네 야야자 랭엠바사스 땡기 사부요로 밀게나 코치 티바사네 마부사비네 개와사네 야부사요로 단둘자지네 코시다 티바시다 시사에 메시데 텐디 가르소라 기분 된게 이네 코알은 게 먼저 거라 코아코라 밀게나다 할게나다 레라라와메 바 풍부돌레체네 티두 냥고나 만디부데 삼비오라 토마 메바네 단다도 스테샤주레 딘딩메두 삼비오라 어디 인디자 코텔리아 가르소라 냐모 차르다라 소바 어때서 코아 동해지랑 신천도 다네 니만 정거라 너나 소바나시 코아 갑지체모나 대화나면 요마에서라 아니 기내시 간주 코알이야 대화 요래 삼기와래 대화대 롬베테 코에 대화대 소소파 롬베 대화체데마다 대왕원에 대요 말에서 거라 가서래 해반 남라 둘이 냐와 당수 지키줘서 해반 삼루 당신게지나 둘이 하다 매 깨와도 정감전이 신자를 지그라 해반 남라 둘이 냐와 당수 지키줘서 하다 매 깨와도 아무 말을 삼 동해지랑 세리에 삼 소소를 라와메바 라 아니 레 기디 마부지 레 틱바 마부사 공개텔리시로와 해반 남라 둘이 냐와 당수 지키줘서 대화 코에 대화원에 개가 말했어. 민대비지나 소소리아 깔레를 같이 유나 깔레데 매나서 강에 대파져서나 아니 대화가 듯이 깨버려서라. 강에 지유나 라메 미실페나 칼라를 사야 메시지세 칼라라서나 대화 출비하라. 저것도 되나 동해요라. 다 칼라 사서나 다 대화 저 다야 무시고 청소사 대화제라. 그 대왕원에 그 말했어라. 다들 그 깔레디여서 다 단다티 칼라라자 다 대회 듯이 다야 붙여서 잘라르지 매지 쪼그러지 지네 깔레를 겹쳐서나 야구저거 땅아 야구 차서 삼제 대화적이어라. 그 대왕원에게 말해 대왕원에 이나 칼라 사여르지네 티네시 사야지 때네 사여라버르지네 아니 거야 개요 말해. 자기 강에 대면서 대vel로 깨르마 드네 저저래 대vel로 깨고 말해. 자기 동에 대시와 참래. 대연데 대화를 넘어서면 이제라 코에 대화도 대화를 넘어서면 돼서 소소 대화를 넘어서면 대왕원에 말해서 대왕원에 이나 그나 미지 차되나 차저는 이말을 저저 차부치 살 때서 아다 야구십 소소서 대화 소거라 여기 차배 동에 대면서 대화 소라 다단다 될 대왕원에 이네 코티 차와된 영혼 주되는 대화다가 라자 대고라 라자 대요 말이야 동에 대더라고 미래지 야가를 차서 담보 야부 쳐서서 또 진행부 차서 한테 만들 때기로 와. 그래서 코에 대화 상마대 강에 지여 소소 라와 지여 팀마주 이제 뒤트서나 아니 대vel도시 삼비와라 다 야부 쳐서 삼 소화 대화를 해. 대원의 대화에는 대 유단 깨데다가 대서나 대vel도시 대 삼로도 다가 대어라. 대대 말에 칼라르세나 조실도 대 사수는 빼 대화 소리라. 경원에 대화에는 양자사다. 버릇이 주고라 방자나. 사코디 대왕원에 계려 다뭐 또산티 동에 매매 사상 어디서 야 담만도셔서 다 코알이야 대화 매단데 시거다. 동에 기라 시시마도 대왕원에 대던 그 말이스 동에 기라 시리스 개발 남라 둘이가 냐와 당송 지켜줘. 냐와도 군이 개발시다면도 삼겨라. 냐 단두도 가도 대체 냥대르마도 미게 되고 대화를 넘어마도 야 양자 마음은 가르쳐도 된대 하고요 말아 야 들지소나
So, for a being of small scope, their renunciation, their wishing to definitely emerge, to say it literally, is from the lower realms. Out of a fear of the lower realms, they want to make sure they gain a good rebirth as a human or a god. But for a being of middling scope, they see that even if one is to take birth as a human or a god, those births are subject to the sufferings of birth, aging, and death, birth, aging, sickness, and death. And so if we accumulate non-virtue, yes, we are going to be born in the lower realms. But if we accumulate virtue even, we are going to take a birth that is still within the nature of suffering. So here, although it is important that we gain or we have a good rebirth, take advantage of that, because, for example, one can't really do much virtue as an animal. It's really not possible to engage in positive actions. But when one is born as a human or a god, one is still subject to this process of samsara, of having to cast away these aggregates and take up new ones out of the force of our karma and afflictions. And we have been doing this since beginningless time, cycling, casting off aggregates and taking up new ones. And this really comes from our attachment and animosity and ignorance. So there is no sort of real pleasure within samsara. Although we sort of look at certain things and think that they are pleasure, we're sort of inflating that sense of pleasure or really exaggerating it. So scholars, those who are really knowledgeable, see sort of higher realms, even births as humans or a god, as not that different from a hell realm, as being born in a hell realm, because the pleasures of samsara are not real pleasures. For example, when we have some kind of difficulty and that is alleviated or our suffering is relieved, we think that this is pleasure. It's sort of, there's a feeling of satisfaction that, oh, I've gotten something pleasurable. So for example, if you're really hungry and you're able to eat some food, it relieves that difficulty, that suffering of hunger that you had, but it's not actual happiness. If it were sort of actual happiness, then no matter how much we engaged in that, as long as we had those causes and conditions, it should lead to more and more pleasure. But it doesn't actually work that way. For example, if we are like cold and we seek some relief near some heat, it should be the case that, okay, if that heat is in the nature of pleasure, as much as we get of that heat, it should be pleasurable. But it's not exactly like that. If we remain right there, eventually that's going to turn into suffering. It's going to change. We won't experience pleasure anymore. And so we can see this in the way that, like, when we get new things, we feel a sense of satisfaction from them for a moment, but then they soon get old and we want something else. We want something new, because all of this is in the nature of suffering. It's not actual pleasure. So if it were the case that these things were really pleasurable, then as long as the causes and conditions were in place, we should experience pleasure. Like a person who is hungry and is then able to eat, as much as they eat, if they eat more and more and more, they should become more and more and more happy. But we see that actually they'll make themselves sick, like they'll end up vomiting from too much food. And it's not the case that that thing that we identify as being pleasurable is actually in the nature of pleasure, but it's in the nature of suffering. So again, those who are sort of knowledgeable, who are scholars, don't see any real difference between those higher rebirths and a birth in the hell realms, because all of these are in the nature of suffering. So being of middling capacity looks to the cycle of samsara, of all of samsara, that process of uncontrolled rebirth due to our karma and afflictions. And that is what they want to get out of. That is what they have this kind of renunciation or an attitude of wanting to definitely emerge from.
Nhưng ngày mới nữa. Nên đó là bản chất của biến hội khổ. Nếu hạnh phúc là đích thực thì chúng ta
다 된다 공간에도 나서를 두자 싶지 나로와 아니 맹간을 체제 진이 아주 다 주타로 전에 저도이네 저도 맨날 삼 기타를 자서나 된 배야우를 삼자 야 자서나 다 겁시비 와라 소 되어 와라 다이네 자서 다야우 싶죠 삼비라 다데코 자거데 나자 매네 자야 되와 다데 딱바르 시와라 데또 손에 예사를 그렇게 다 나자 매네 자위네 통다이네 무지만디네 동에 냐데르마도 되게 대화데 되기면 와 자고 대외 주디 코에 대외 주디 그저 여나 대화데 랑자 대기 말에서 거래 되게 당부 걸어서 삼을 단저식 다야고 조사라 생문에 단단 걸어 다 만나면서 자자자와 딱버릇이 삼고로 다나 기후에 삼자 나서면 하고 싶어서 되기면 와 지만디니 아 현다 동에 시삼을 거더라 어디에 그 동에 코에 동에 대외 주디 그저 내나 그 대화들랑자 대기요 말해 동해기 주디 동해랑자 대기로 와 지메제지 똑바로 쉬지 동해랑 양지 대기로 마다 똑바시니 버릇이 대화해야지 그거 말와 어디 손잡고 코에 대화리야 기분 정도도 삼려하고 다들 사람이 대화돼 대화시 대화 스스로 말마다 대화만 해결해 면도 삼기 와르다 teacher ta được chưa teacher
Trèo qua lót ba nữa. Trèo qua lót ba.
Lomba.
Trèo qua lót ba.
대왕원에게 말을 소수 삼로 봐서 시작이라 야부시라 맨에 소수 삼로 딱 그때부터 삼 대왕원에 이내 소수 봐서 먹어야지 그래서 이제 대학으로 와 근데 그 대교 말아 소수 롬바로 와 ngajeru chechi ina sharpa so samlo shukyan basa shara.
So here we can think about this like, for example, if we go, we're really sick and we have to go to the hospital, and we go to the hospital and the doctor gives us a diagnosis and then gives us some kind of a treatment, and we're healed. We're like sort of fixed from whatever illness that is. We experience a kind of pleasure at that, like, okay, wow, I'm well, I'm good now. And we have this kind of sense that like that will remain forever. We that sort of absence of illness we hold on to as if that were like real happiness that we're going to remain. But within samsara, something's always going to sort of go wrong. It's not going to remain like that. The sort of causes of suffering are constant, and there's no real happiness to be had. Again, although we might sort of feel this sense of happiness at this at being freed from an illness, it's not going to remain that way. We are going to face other adversities, other sufferings. And so here, the being of middling scope doesn't get sort of enthralled with these pleasures of samsara. They see that there is no real pleasure in samsara. They're all kind of like inflated. They're sort of created by our mind, sort of puffed up and exaggerated, in that the things that are viewed as pleasurable, like of a god or a human being, are really not in the nature of pleasure, but again, like created by our mind, inflated, exaggerated. And so a being of middling capacity doesn't grasp at them as pleasure, but really sees that they are in the nature of suffering and not real pleasure.
Cái mà cảm giác của chúng ta cho là hạnh phúc an lạc đó, cái hạnh phúc đó chỉ là một cái tưởng cho là hạnh phúc thôi, nó không có thực.
dạ thế chỉ tôi chẳng bằng quân về xong cái đó mình sao là chỉ xin mess mình sao là chỉ muốn xin bây giờ cái mà rồi sẽ ra chỉ xin trong cái ta là cái mess đó ri trung đó sẽ ra nhiều gì đó trong mi là sẽ nên đó rồi đó 하면 이제는 도와를 주게 봐. 자, 거기에 대화리야. 영원에 그 요마를 숨겨라. 뒤에 기분 된게 따준다 코. 견전도 통당 통로진데 통고를 생각도 시해라. 야, 된지스.
So here, the Master Maitreya has said that like the unclean, so sort of like something that is dirty or the unclean doesn't have a good smell. Like our excrement does not have a good smell. And so too, the 5 realms of existence, and here that's sort of counting hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, and gods. If we divide demigods and gods, that makes 6 realms. But within the 5 realms, there is no happiness. So in the way that something that is dirty can't have a good smell, so too there's no real happiness within the 5 realms of samsara.
Thì ở trong sinh tử luân hồi thì chẳng cái gì là an lạc hạnh phúc.
저 개별 남라 이단 바셔야 되라 기부 전부 장주선들어 지금 아주 갈소래 주주나 시시를 가산주고 미게 심제 따나야 소래 나라도 미가 심제 따나 알아서 남주 따다데 미데 시작부터 삼야오도 미데 도자 ken자지도 왔음 이 가르에는 히스케메 삼자를 따다지오라 어딘데 매비지 따거라 상마탐제 알아서 더번더번 심제 탐제 때와 때에 주단데만 동해대 동해 교단 저 동해 매베 때와다 맨저 니리 차다세 진내신 루드 대디티 삼따기오라 미게 심제 따나야 다시 잠베 수치다스 잠베 섬든데 메코네 파미 참부스타 뭐 어디 야가르 디도르 딩안저르 디콘저르 근데게 삼따기 오마라 전주 섬바죠 미게 심제 따나야 다시 잠베 수치다스 요 아니 셔야 가서래 지대 대화 진이 받고 현대 될래죠. 지대 동의 진이 받고 라데 될래죠. som보다 소소소 제 개셔와지네 소소 대화의 개셔와지에서나 아니 만디로와 근데 동의 용거라 미션다리아 저와셔서 되게 심보지에서나 니 대화 용거라 지대 대화 진이 받고 현대 될래죠. 지대 동의 진이 받 라데 될래죠. 저라 마음도 쉽게 마음게 셔고 말으세 나라도 집에 소소 교도도 소소 단다 짱짱 축첨부사 안에 득바사 가가지라 소소 단다 주했단다라 집에랑도 통화시 도산제 좀 되데 개발 마음부깔에 접제 신소 제제 身边做些助念当的上结果，对上当的这个的，现在给些鬼有嘛的手段呀。
So then turning to the contemplation of a being of great scope, so here we should have a sort of attitude wherein when we look at sentient beings, we do so with a kind of like honest, straightforward, and kind of loving attitude. So here, as the sort of we'll get to this verse from Master Shantideva, where he explains that whatever sort of when we see beings with our eyes, whenever we interact with beings, we should do so with a smile, with a sort of open and honest kind of attitude. So here, normally when we look at other beings, we think like, oh, that's a good person, or oh, there's someone that I don't like what's up with that person? They're really strange. And we have this kind of way of looking at them that is a sort of from our self-cherishing attitude. Instead, we should look at other sentient beings with the kind of attitude, may they have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free from attachment for some and hatred for others. So this is the way that we should approach beings, with a kind of kind, open demeanor, in a way that is not discriminating between some that we see as our enemies or as weird or as bad. But instead, we should view them with the kind of attitude of the four immeasurables, wanting them to have happiness and so forth. And so as the verse later in Shantideva says, whatever kind of suffering, whatever happiness there is in the world, this comes from wishing to benefit others. And whatever kind of suffering there is in the world, this comes from pursuing our own aims. So what need is there to say more than this? Look at the difference between what we, childish beings, have accomplished and a fully enlightened Buddha, the sage who has attained full enlightenment. What need is there to really say more? So whatever kinds of suffering we experience come from our pursuing our own aims, our self-cherishing attitude. Whereas whatever kind of happiness there is in the world, that arises from this genuine altruism, this wish to benefit others. So really look at the difference between us as childish beings and Buddhas, and what need is there to say more?
Hãy nhìn cái hành xử của mình với Đức Phật thì biết là tại mình hạnh phúc có được thì qua lợi ích cho thế gian, còn những cái khổ đau có ra thì do ích kỷ và chỉ muốn tự lợi.
Nói rằng là最重要吧，用不着那么去问那两个多，容易接不了准备状态的是，说是讲给学学时代的我的等到搞成俺这个啥，这些的没状态那不那些的，状态是呢，说不通的没有南边那边那着有点给学了，这也是没给去，状态是了，搞两个是的，那全部切头嘛的，我的那些。没状态有的两个修行不切头嘛的是个啦，我的那些就是让的给些这多那个呢，两个乐全部先别两个家全部要我等的切头嘛的是个啦，让你状态让你接不了这边状态的是，面对东西这边就是通的是，但东西刚刚接的就得地的下上，连带了说他的不都说是给切这，说是对我给切这呢。你这个设计啥？这个设计啥的？然后捐钱给的，捐送给的，我那是让经济的人多什么？让基本钱把的基本钱嘛是啥？俺要不用个有什么基本的钱的，就的时候的上，所以等他主要的县了那个钱，他刚刚县了上了马当就住不了了，对嘛的啦？现让基本钱那个，就的要不住那的这样的，我的说的，让你基本钱被交难的是，面对东北这边就做那是。连带了，他这里啊，困境结果来写的，俺那这里困境结果嘛，当当的搞了，俺经济的了，说什么说呀，战争了，俺该什么人上了的，对吧？基本就是面对东西，连带了，困的时候困境结下了，困，这样给上了的，叫他们没完的，俺真的是当的不得考是带球的是，现在上了当然那嘛的上了当俺到处上街啥的。上街下街头吧，那些上街啥的是，当然这样呀，扎的给是真的上了大不了的，讲究什么，真的上了口不了的呀，就是了呢。
So here, like Je Lama Tsongkhapa's line here, and those who place their trust in the path that pleases the conquerors, referring to this being of great capacity and their sort of attitude. Here, this is also echoed in the Guru Puja, wherein it says, this chronic disease of cherishing ourselves is the cause giving rise to our unsought suffering. Perceiving this, we seek your blessings to blame, begrudge, and destroy the monstrous demon of selfishness. So here, like a chronic disease, like somebody who's sort of sick and they can't be healed, they're going to always suffer from the effects of that illness. We have this chronic disease of self-cherishing. It is what brings about all of our various sufferings. So seeing ourselves as most important, we strive to gain our happiness. But really, that's the thing that is causing all of these faults. That is the source of all of our troubles. If we did it properly, like if we had the right kind of understanding of what are the causes that would bring us happiness and what brings us suffering, then that would be different. But here, our self-cherishing pursues the wrong kind of causes and thus brings about this unsought suffering. And so really, this is the thing that we should blame and begrudge. Like normally we hold grudges or resentment against others, but really we should resent this self-cherishing attitude, because this is the thing that since beginningless time has created all of our suffering. And if we could get rid of that attitude and instead cultivate an attitude that cherishes others, then that would be the way in which we could get rid of this. So here, rather than sort of as it says here, perceiving this, that our self-cherishing is the cause of all of our unsought sufferings, we should really blame and begrudge that kind of demon, that kind of negative attitude of selfishness, and instead cultivate an altruistic attitude.
Any person does not. Chizamji, choose Sabuji shades and the tenasora. Choose Samusun Shabakari, Tetana Kari, shades and the Tebi in Nasigora. Choose Samukadis in a Koya, shades and any cheddar lawn, Tabachet in the Chevy in Nasigora. Chizamji, Samushi, shades and the tenasora. Tamja Ragi, but to start at the Mandriba Tunga, you have somewhat a ranking changes. So Shabashiri to us or ranching rankachimucha. Tamji ranking bados. You end up Gavanda Tanda Tawara, you had the same Shandal Yamucha, but did Debudo, so upon a pamper to did Debude to us. You then Tamjera. You then Tamja Cho Sim Jangi, Kadim Bados, Cho Sudia, Chedishera. So Sim Jangi, Tony Bandosicora. They nega keda jaga nega tisoza nyota de chune kepsa de keda jaga shala kurser taga zu jigde chane digom hate keda jaga de shala kursera keda jaga shala chinsigora jonda pamga ragelemba di imbale kuju meduse soso jonge mil pendo truba chiju tema do shanda koya ke meduse pese kandesta na tada ngone papsa de tere sha songora. Oh, this was another Tanda Chetuba di Che Simbial Saba, Rembe Champagne Chiata, there's a mule shagora, Tanda Kanga di Chetumar, the Paje, Lo Changura, or pay over the Chanju Simba said, Tender some new chamber, Cashambu or some, Nazu attended Rembe Chetuache, Tarsanke Jepo, the Drogodes and the mule shagora, or Ding Umare, Gaga, Tender Rata, Tender some Latana. Kunke Yomar Sigra, Tainati, Tanda Kunke Mena Tembache, Susu Tanda Truelia, Shalet Sawa Machanity Dara, Tilo de Changis and Changis again any area Dura, went under to the Paja Yogura, Kongangi Yogura, or Tisozako Kibuchunguta, drink the Chambu, with Samlo Namjune Panja Tane, Nikawa Kibe, Lamla Shutu Vache. Oh, yeah, any degree that in the Samlutane. Kibuchongo dan drink the Chebe Lamla, Rimji, Lamne, Sanji Kovantoba Chigi some, Teacher, Shenyangi some, Detache or so. I think I am a Trumkis of them, some Giomara, 마음 보는 거는 같은데 내버려도 지게 삼사 단단히 제토 말에 장기 삼사 또 개와 충중 전에 사계 고반 토베 규규시 개와 충중 제베나 방어한테 될 방어 시작에는 태일럽 전부터 그거라 아니 박사샤그라 사계 고반 토 박사샤그도 어떤데 삼로 따내니 최선 버쇼 셰쿠를 전 안데
So here, as the Kadampa Geshe, the master Langri Tangpa, has said, like however profound the Dharma that we know, we should recognize that all faults come from self-cherishing. Excuse me, and all qualities are the result of the kindness of others. So therefore, we should give profit and victory to others and take upon ourselves sort of all loss. So here, whatever sort of dharma we may learn, however profound it may be that we listen to or that we study, really all of it should go back to recognizing that it is our self-cherishing attitude that is the source of all of our troubles and faults. And really all good qualities, all kinds of sort of realizations and qualities that we could wish to develop come from the kindness of others. This is how we accumulate virtue and so forth. And so here, we should strive to be able to get to the point where we can offer all of the profit and victory to others and sort of take the loss upon ourselves. And here, again, even if we are not yet able to give up all of our kind of self-cherishing attitude, at the very least, we should recognize that it is in our own interest to abandon harming others. That even if we're not yet able to do all of the kinds of things to get us to Buddhahood, we should hold that as our ultimate objective, but recognize that we need to train in sequence. We can sort of hold as the basis, our objective is to get to that state of Buddhahood, but we need to train our minds in the kind of scope, the attitudes of the being of small and middling and great scope. And so here we should have this kind of resolve, thinking that I am going to train in these various paths in order to get to the state of Buddhahood. It shouldn't be sort of like a story or a fantasy or something that's just made up, but rather this is something that we are really actually pursuing, that we are definitely going to try to do. And so here, even though we may not be able to engage in all of these trainings, placing them in this realm of like aspiration of what we are striving for, and seeing that by dedicating our merit, we accumulate a vast amount of positive virtue. And by placing these kinds of imprints on our mind, we are creating the kind of causes to continue this path. So with that sort of contemplation, with that thinking, we should set a good motivation for listening to these teachings. Again, placing as our ultimate objective Buddhahood, but recognizing we begin by the simple act of abandoning harming others and abandoning the non-virtues. That's how we begin this path.
Thì dần dần nó được sẽ nảy nở và một ngày nào đó chúng ta sẽ có khả năng để đạt được quả vị Phật. Với cái động cơ đó chúng ta hãy suy nghĩ và tư duy vì lợi ích cho tất cả chúng sinh. Con nghe cái bài pháp ngày hôm nay.
뭐야, 다 되셔. 오야, 당연 좀 데려다, 싸와 데려다. 강증을 당음에 다 하셔야 강증을 당음에 다 하셔. 관계 제에서 대나서 다대시에 살아. 대나 관계 제 뭐보다 하셔도 수다대로를 잘라서 봐. 교단 깨할 때는 깨배 뭐부터 좀 거보시거라. 교진할 때는 깨배 뭐 수다대로를 잘라서 봐. 강사라서 봐. 상망 거보러. tension never said, Kudan kill it any kid. Shall Kanga tell you was what? What is it? Kangi say, Mobotas. Mummy so the Mobo Timber Meba tell a mummy so don't bang it raw. Suit and the Mobo chair. Su Rawa to Truba Mebate. Mummy chair. And social cha. Social Mobo chair. Kansa social. Social Rawa to Truba Mebate. Mummy chair. Don't bang it raw. Social don't bang it raw. Tiniga temperature homa resura, Kansinguta, Mumetas, Mubumeba Nigasur. Tanda Dujeg Shutamjeta, Dujeg Shutamje, Temper Meva Rangune, Rawan to Trubanaya, Rawan to Trubanawa, and she Temper Meva. Temper Meva said it to look over. Rawan to Truba Naya, Rawan to Truba now and she temper my boss. Oh, and consing with the Meta, Loy Duna Menebase, Ngobuta, Ngobu, Duje Tamjetan, Duje Koran Kitenge, and it Tongbany, Ngobu Mebar, Tongbany Derwa, Duje Rangun and Matuva, round the Matuvat. Oh, Tia, and Tambatu Yomar. Kadasuna, Samsam Bada, Kevin Mabuchi, Duje did it to Gumar, Duje Nelu Tardu. Don't number two go to teaching you go there some the Nelu Tatu in a Karina Church, Nelu Chibare. DJ in a Sanje in a Simja in a Draco, Kona Yoda, the Karisna teaching but him, mother, take care of your mother. Which is a Keva Mabuke, Samsambuget in the Sura. Shotam Nelu Tatu, the temperature by the essay. Oh, just did Chibare Sura. Consequently, the meta, Loy Duna Mineba, Novo Dango Meba Samatiswara, Temperature Loy Duna Mineba, Tesewara, Tomba Kanga, Rawan to Truba Tomba, Rawan to Truba, Ranging Truba, Rang Shinji Truba, the cousin of the Mabashemba, Tombany said, Ta Tombany, Ra Tombanyra, Ra Tombara, Rawan to Truba Tombara. So the tension really. Sobodan Semdan Soadan Dushita, and it Yimabo Technical, Tare de Oro, Mire de Oro Mato, Nangara me, Chiksu, me, but in dear Chik Tangi Omara, or Tisunda, Rawan to Tubanava. Chutam Rangshin get Tomba Nabayanda, which is a tower in Barnadu, Sirvani Bunalia. Rangshin it was a Koran Rangshin to Tuiba. And the Kare Rangshin Mana, Geshe-ma. Shandala Turgeon Jelly, Leva Nichi Sershan, or Didi in the As Mingita, Didi in the As Mingitani, Tesam Kosha Congesiro. So Rangshingi to a mare, German Chashe Mambokora Mainge Chashe, Tanders in the Pumbunga, Noa, Skeleton Leva Tani, any trashy to do Chichi Spartagora, Tesam Lashago the Matoche, that she cut the second. Tatashi Dirisha, so would the remedo, sem de remedo, de do Sangashi Yomara. Oh, this Tomban yes, the telesagi, some semblice shower, Nipasa Shagra. Oh, yeah. Tanda, Churchin, Robota, Robo Meba, Churchin, Rawan to Tuba Meba, Tombaniti, Niga, Tombani Koran, Ramuna Matuba, Temba Matuba, Esigora. Kanzingo Dango Meta, Loy do not temper to a Meneba, Tessigua. Oh, gosh, there's a number shame, Bessie. They say, Tashanda ne Gayomara. Mineva Tese, temper to be any number Shandake to a Homar, that temper to be high Homar, Rawan to Tubana and Nashi, temper engage lay Homar. Chujango Kanga, Rawan to Tuba Homar. Ngobu Rawan to Tuba Mebe, Tombangitia, Rawan to Tuba Yomara. Can the Tatemba Tuba, Ngobu Shandaji Lai Homar, Sigara. There's a number shame, Bessie. Temper to be number, temper to be Ranshi Shandaji Homar, Sigara, some temper Madure. There's a number shame, Bess, Shameba. When you got it. There's a number shame, Mepe. Migba Meba Rabdu Shise. Migba Meba Rabbi. Tinzingi Migba de Sutada. Mebareta, Temban Zimbardi, some Temban Zingora. Oh, the church condition round Tuban Zimbabwe, make back a test to the Samlutan Saka Shidi Sigora, Temban to Bayoma, and make back test to Kanye, Sigora. Migba Meba Rabbi, she said the Kaisosna. Tinzingi Migba Teso, Migba Tesate, Samlutan Sati, Round to Tuba, Zibetinzing, Samlutan, Round to Tubate. Yomare Kaya Yomare so Migbe so Migba Meba Rabdushis. Tinzig Samlutan de Samlutan Tunda de Meba de Rabdushia Resore. Trabanyor Shiva Rese. This one, what teach Sumshana?
So here then, picking up in the root text of Shantideva, this is verse 34. So it says, when neither a truly existent entity nor a truly existent non-entity remains before the mind, then since there is no other alternative, the mind, being without objective support of grasping onto true existence, is calmed. So those true existence are in brackets. But so here, when it refers to when neither an entity, a truly existent entity, so here a thing like forms, sounds, taste, touch, etc., the person and so forth, things that meaning those that are arisen from causes and conditions that are able to function. So here, those things, again, in this mind of someone who is meditating on emptiness, there is no sort of truly existent entity that remains before the mind. Nothing that is truly existent is before the mind. And yet there is also the sort of non-entity does also not remain before the mind, because the emptiness of form itself is not inherently existent, is not truly existent. And so therefore there's no sort of entity or thing or non-thing that remains before the mind. So here, the person as a thing, as well as the person's lack of inherent existence, neither of those are truly existent or objectively existent, autonomously existent from its own side. So here it is really getting at the fact that there is nothing in terms of conditioned phenomena that exists as a inherently or from its own side. And the emptiness of those things, the emptiness that are of those bases, is also not inherently existent. So here, this is really in contradistinction to the view of certain philosophical schools like the mind-only school that say that the ultimate mode of existence of phenomena is really truly existent. So here, like the sort of ultimate nature, the ultimate mode of existence of everything from the Buddha to sentient beings to all of these various phenomena, they would say that they all are the same in not and sort of having this ultimate mode of existence. And for them, the mind-only school says that that sort of ultimate reality is really truly existent. And yet, according to the Prasangika school, the middle way, they would say that even that ultimate sort of reality of phenomena, their ontological status or their mode of existing, even that is not truly existent. So here, when we have, like, for example, the I that is designated, it's dependent upon many sort of causes and conditions and parts and so forth, our mind designating that as I. And so there's not one thing that we can point to and say that is the I, that is the person. So like in the Heart Sutra, where it says that all phenomena, and Avalokiteshvara saw that even the five aggregates are empty of intrinsic existence. So that kind of intrinsic existence means that they are dependent upon others in the sense of being causally dependent upon the various parts, as well as being designated through term and concept. They don't have this kind of inherent existence. A person, like we might say, oh, that's Tashi or that's Tundrup. But when we look within their aggregates, their form and their consciousness and so forth, there's not something that we can point to and say that is the person, that is Tashi, that is Tundrup, but rather they are merely designated upon this collection of parts that is causally created. And so here, when we think about their emptiness, we're sort of laying down imprints in our mind when we examine conditioned phenomena. But then we also have to turn and see that that emptiness itself is also not objectively existent, not existent by means of its own sort of substance, not inherently existent. So here, in this kind of state of meditation, there is nothing that remains before the mind in terms of a thing that is appearing as truly existent, or its emptiness, this non-thing being truly existent. That does not appear either. And so here, and variations, there'll be various translations, but since there is no other alternative, or since there's nothing remaining before the mind, being without objective support, so here there's no sort of object for the grasping of at true existence. So all of those kinds of bases, those points for us to grasp at as being truly existent have been completely removed. They are all sort of calmed or pacified. Whatever kind of elaborations of grasping at true existence have been eliminated through this kind of realization. So again, those things, those entities don't appear as truly existent, but neither does their emptiness. That emptiness of inherent existence is itself not truly existent. And so therefore, there is nothing, again, that is truly existent remaining before the mind. There's no sort of objective support for that grasping on to true existence. That has all been calmed, those kinds of elaborations of true existence.
Nên tại vì tất cả các hiện tượng sự vật nó không tồn tại một cách độc lập, không có thực thể, không có tự tính. Nên khi lúc đó thì tâm chúng ta không duyên vào cái tướng sai khác ngoài cái tướng là nó phụ thuộc duyên khởi, hay nó không có thực thể, không có tự tính, không có tồn tại độc lập, thì lúc đó tâm của chúng ta sẽ hoàn toàn được vắng lặng.
Oh yeah, that is. Oh yeah, that is. Big Bang me ba rab do shi se tenzin gi zimba na shin gi ta so big ba zhe de nya wa de shi wa re so nya wa de shi se rab do shi se de zhe ba nya wa de shi wa se go ra zhe ba se de ni ku yo ra kun zu so zha zhe ro re sha le so ba de zo ga la zhe ba se go ra kun zu ba che to zo zhe ba se de ngo da me da che le da me da ma bu de wa zhe ba se de che na kya shen bu de se go ra so zha zhe ro re sha le so ba de zo ngo da me da ma bu yo ra de zo le zhe ba che se go ra kun zu ku na wa de kun zu ba che dong ba ni ma ye ge kun zu ba che de do wa de zo ga ga zhe ba che se go ra de ni a ra wa du zhe ba na ra wa du zhe ba den ba zhe ba ra wa du zhe ba de le zhe ba che se de ka che zhe ba ra de yo ma ro ye ina de le zhe ba se go ra ra wa du zhe ba den jing ge dang jing ge zhe ba na xin ra wa du zhe ba ye ba mi be de su ra wa du zhe ba ye ba de ra wa du zhe ba de o de le ya zhe ba se go ra zhe ba ni do a kun zu ba che ka ga zhe ba chi de ne ra wa du zhe ba le zhe ba chi ni do a o de zhe ba de kan de se dong ba ni ngue sum do to so na kun zu be zhe ba ka ga ni wa shi wa ro kun zu nang ge ma ro dong ba jiang jiang ma do nang ge ma ro kun zu be zhe ba tam zhe ni wa shi wa re dong ba ni jiang jiang ma do nang ge yo ma ro dong ba ni ngue sum do to so na zhe ba ni shi den ba se shi wa re shi ro ni de我们早些时候我搞的确确的，这把你洗洗的哦的的的，这把些的，工作边旁边伢下些个东北人我送都随便我了，这把看看洗啥的是工作边需要嘛的，东北讲讲，然后都这边东北的讲讲是个的是我的，这是我的，到东北你当个东北有了吧，我送都嘛都我些，但那个就上不当呢，就上不当也只有的当，这东北上不当，我送都东北嘛的。当被说三当的就是讲你天天的人生怕三当这个多，哦，这就来工作被闹有的，他的工作被闹有的，工作被闹弄有嘛的，这这边开始学的是呢，天白做的，有让我都做的可开吧的，让我都做的没都上吧的，让我都做的没都上，人家工作被闹有的，东西闹有的，东西是那的，可能去所有消息，什么东山去那个有的。这个工作就做吧，需要嘛的，各些做吧是个啦，让我都做吧的，开过了个，让我都做吧没什么东西到的个啦，我的做吧需要的了，适当你的话，这是说呢，
So here in the last line, it says, sort of being without objective support, the mind is calm. So objective support of grasping on to true existence. And here, this is sort of the object as it appears or as it is grasped by our grasping at true existence. And we often call this the elaborations of true existence. And so here, in terms of elaborations or the way that this word is used, there are two sort sort of connotations. There are the conventionalities. Conventionally existent things are sort of like forms and sounds and tastes and touch. The appearance of those conventional phenomena is referred to as the elaboration of conventional phenomena. So that's one level of sort of elaboration. And then there is the elaboration, which is the appearance of things as being truly existent, that kind of objective existence, as though they had that sort of autonomous existence or existence in their own right without depending upon anything else. So in the kind of direct realization of emptiness, within the meditative equipoise of an Arya or a superior being, when they are directly realizing emptiness, they have pacified both of these. They have pacified the sort of appearances of conventional phenomena. No conventional thing is appearing to them. They have again, are directly realizing emptiness alone. And they have also therefore pacified the kind of elaborations of true existence or of objective existence, things existing in that way that they appear to our self-grasping or grasping at true existence. So here, for that Arya or superior being in a direct realization of emptiness, both of those are pacified. But for someone who is realizing emptiness conceptually through a mental image or a generic image, a conceptual image, there's the appearance of the conventional. So conventional phenomena have not been pacified because again, there's that image that is coming up in our mind. We have an image of, oh, this is emptiness and so forth. So we haven't yet pacified the kind of elaborations of conventional appearances. But to the sort of ascertainment of that mind, one has pacified or sort of refuted the elaborations of true existence, of things existing as though they existed objectively or in their own right. So through our reasoning related to emptiness, one has eliminated those kinds of elaborations of the sort of appearance of true existence, of objective existence, but the conventional thing still appears to that conceptual mind. So here, this is the word that is used within the homage to Root Verses of Wisdom by Nagarjuna, where he says, one who has pacified all elaborations.
And the name of the Tanda Karshegurasana, the Shulgan Diche, one the March, Shulgan Rache, Shulga Tubutigi, Taige, Tombani, Rawan, Netube, Tomba Combater, Keran Kova Medusa, Yamu Dotu Medusa, Yamu Pantu Mares, Chavachera, Otilia de Combalaten, Jebuti took Grace, Lanja Yora Denma. Tanda de Tombani Toy, Yora, the Tisha, womanity, Shevior, or teach them 10 to
So here then there are those who, when they read this, when neither an entity nor a non-entity remains before the mind, they understand this kind of in a mistaken way, that there is no subject and object, that there's like an objectless cognition, and that's really not a logical kind of a stance. It's a misunderstanding of what is meant here. So this verse, as well as the sort of 5 verses that follow, this is again responding to the kind of claim that there is no need for this meditation or this realization of the lack of intrinsic existence or lack of true existence of phenomena, because it can't get rid of the sort of realization of emptiness that you posit cannot get rid of this grasping at true existence. That's what is asserted by some of these other schools. So here, this is a response to that, showing that it is through the habituation to that, or by meditating on emptiness, eventually one is able to eliminate that grasping at true existence. So here, the verses that follow, the next 5 verses, will also address this.
tính không thì có thể loại trừ được tất cả những cái phiền não nhiễm ô.
Đi sẽ là, đi sẽ là. Tan đi nên đi sẽ gọi là, cả số đó. Trong bao nhiêu tổ bên chế bu thì trong bao nhiêu tổ bên chế bu rồi. Thì nên như sum sao bao nhiêu hay gọi đấy sẽ. Tan đi cả số đó năm tổ mấy chẳng rồi. Tan sáng chế đó thế rồi là number tổ qua mẹ rồi. Tan đó trong bao nhiêu người sum được tổ qua mà rồi, tổ mẹ rồi người sum sẽ cái rồi. Nhưng sáng chế là number tổ qua mẹ rồi, sáng chế sao số nào. Number tổ qua sẽ ngăn chú sam bên này. Social assembly chik char chuen pa samlu ta yachwa tinji sigra ngazu khashila imba ngazu assembly ta de chilo de motor de ye samlu ta yadwa ta de social assembly na de bestwa motor ngone gan jana de social assembly de le yora de motor ngone maro tinji sigra tende tokba le ta de lam ne ta de de ta Mota minta duzani semli chagdo car sera vendi kumba sera kawa sera lapso semli namsa chi chayong do tiri tunji sigratile tragi kolpa nawadi ya tengu tangi ora chalan rojene chala chi kisho sila ti kishigi samti chaito do tuzu trandile tokba sigra number tokba Aranzu yiji sheba samluta mangsa number tokba re Migi sheba nawe sheba ne sheba tozo ne tokba mebe tongmeji sheba sigra kora ku yudi yona tungu re yudi mene tungu mare ta lokshin re ne norne tona ya kashi mishi trashen zakba nawa se tide doga tauta chudu nawa se ra o mado she kanga ta tozo kanga tongme chushi sigra migi sheba nawe sheba ne sheba tozo tokba yo mare yiji sheba le tokba to tongme niga yorwa 그 산제를 똑바 매래. 그 산제 전주 선배 내가 나몰람 자거래. 또 스르르르 삼을당 군의 심제 마부 등 제투고 말와. 넘버 똑바 매네 군로 매네야. 뒤제 되다 되 감도 삼바다 팀배 고 들어와 여버시네. 되게 콜렉터 때 도비에다 되게 몰람 자거라. 네 뒤제 되 고란데 들어와 여기 되게 이제 고치냐 되게 시도 마오바나니 Sanje kolon te tate shekore te nyangore sam ota ko te samgito samsa nganzo nashi samlu tango mare ganga ngusum to kedere matache o te kolo cheba che yorda sanje liya kunu mena number toba mena ene kendo sigora kare sigora sina o de doa sanje liya toba meba yena sigora ene tuje liya che tango samsa tokba yo marwa se yo marwa mena ne semjanliya chutemba soje zeba chutemba zegres ti tanda mendoa se chutengo samsa tokba mendoa se gora ngaranzu samlutan ne se tokba de yo mardi sanje de ngone chane tendere sire kalsore kona keba mambo sonam de shi so sa so chadu san tujege leda kawa yona ko temperature chi lebi yona sanje ko tatile titengu to sangazu na shi samdang mar titang ko ne semje mabu taisha shi yongu marwa korang shin do pasan shin da shi korang te kap su babatelia sungu se te ya darwa handa ji ne samsal chishin lungu ko en do sigra shin de lagba ke de san chebe tratya 하이 나오실래서 나도 저거 짜짜요 하시라. 알아. 삼절사기 주도 내 최선에서 들려도 와. 어떻게 뒤에 소속을 레다 까발이요나. 산제 가디네 최선 송비요 선수 말에 가지고 고용 거래. 어디서다 기초부터요다. 산제리아 넘버 또 보면은 뒤에리 최된 거 삼사 삼루 요 말로 하세요라. 에네 최선 송부터 Sanje Chuson Shamamoto, one marve, candidate sigora, or Tilia Sabachigora. Tatil Palanjagora. Ishin Nobu Palsam Shin Chitarawa, Yonkoa, so the Ishin Nobu Passages. Kich namdo me na ya ko chibi tanda tuwe yo re chera kyo yo maras. Karesina tome ji karsura number to ba me na ya ro. Ene pene Yeshi ji nobu da pasam Yeshi se. Zambulin liya Yeshi ji nobu se ngeme sanje tendrege rinsi de tendre norbi re cha de tendre ngora. Le da kawa yo na. Ene telia so atem Kenzeng Samulia Ta Chene, so Malam Taptender Chena, so said the Tanda Tender Kanga Dubung Gore. Sete Koralia, Sanje Tilia, Ishindo de la Semke Omara. Ina Telia so Malam Taptizan Kora, Tichekawa, Mi Chidengi Rama Mushi, Sindishoka, Negabki, Rama Mushi Kanto Resagora. Tana se Pasam Yishing says the Wangaza. Mendetan dizan Pasam Yishing Segdoa. Pasam Yishing Delia, Hatozuga, Koranzu Soatam Shana, Dotati Kogi, some Soatamle, Yad Drugi Yesera. Pasam Shing de Locoloke Yomarwa. Yenati Pasam Shing Soatamle, Hatozuga, Dotantu, Nego Dotantu to Yesera. The Yishin of Buddha Pasam Yishing Lia, Gulu Titi Chego, some quality robot Chego, some Samlika Yomare. Mena Kotuje, me, Devadal High and Devati. Nego che tentato di canto grace ora. Ishin dopo pasam shin, ci der rewa yon konwa. Ishin dopo di mi rewa yon so konwa. Pasam shin de lai rewa yon so konwa sigara. Ishin tuje malam jese. Ishin do tuje liya, sanje nam yungon je malam zene. Tanda ngazu na shi jene sembya mambu taye be tanda trupto maro re samu tango re keje she gore re kite keje she na phajo legu maro phajo keshin su leg maro sanje de tuje korange le da kawa kapsu pabiyo na kadi na sanje chacha bada sanje ga sung da te te bhati yungu ora o tinde na tishi sanje tishi tuje malam jese tuje tezulia Sanje ke malam jiwa ke number to ba mena ya zaba kanda kan go koran kewa dan demba yena tu su ti na gre se kora number to mena ya wangi chave kur na mo se iso se to ba mena ya namda to ba mena ro ba che go samsa te to ba mena ya yong gre se pedli ni cha swa Ishindo Buddha Pasam Ishincha. This one, Artishilam modern.
So here again, the kind of a discussion here is what is the result of realizing emptiness? Now, the assertion of the Middle Way School is that there's an excellent result that comes from realizing emptiness. And so here, again, when we realize directly, there is no sort of conceptual or discursive thought. When we have a direct realization of something, we see that without any kind of mediation, the way that there's like a generic image, or we need to have some kind of thoughts. Like, say, for example, when we think like, oh, that's my car, or like, oh, I need to get my car, there's an image that pops into our head. It's a likeness. It's not the actual thing, but we make a sort of mental picture of that. And so here we talk about these are things where it is suitable to sort of connect a sound and a meaning. So we are able to sort of connect a sound with a particular meaning or mental image of something, so that when you say like, oh, go get me that thing, whatever it is, we're both mutually able to understand. We can go get the right sort of thing. And so most of our minds are conceptual. We use this kind of mental images or pictures in order to think. And but we also have sense consciousnesses, which are like sense perceptions. They don't rely upon the kind of conceptual thought. Obviously, we can have those that are sort of mistaken, like mistaking a striped rope for a snake, or some other kind of mistaken sense consciousnesses. But here, ours are generally, we have our conceptual consciousnesses, our discursive thinking, and then those sense perceptions, which are non-conceptual. But so Buddha's and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Buddhas without any sort of conceptual thinking are able to carry out the aims or sort of fulfill the aims of beings without the necessity of that kind of discursive thought. So this is due to the kind of prayers that they made while training over eons. They make these sort of prayers to be able to fulfill all of the wishes of beings in a way that when they get to that state, they're able to affect that sort of effortlessly without the kind of needing to think about it. So here, someone might think, well, to think that there's no sort of conceptual thought, that's not right. The Buddha needs to sort of have a thought. Here, the response to that is that just as a wish-fulfilling gem and a wish-granting tree satisfy all desires, in the same way, the image of the victor is considered to fulfill all desires, motivated by the needs of disciples and the vows of the awakened one. So here, by the kind of accumulating merit over countless eons, the Buddha has the ability to teach in accordance with the needs and dispositions of disciples without sort of needing a kind of conceptual thinking about that. A Buddha is able to effortlessly, non-conceptually display deeds in accordance with the kind of needs of beings. So here, it's like sort of when you have a wish-fulfilling jewel, that doesn't need any kind of conceptual thought. It just grants those sorts of temporary desires that humans might want. We are able to, making a kind of wish to that, we are able to get what we wish. And in this way, like a Buddha is able to spontaneously affect the needs of beings by teaching to them in whatever sort of way that might be beneficial. The Buddha can act like by rustling the leaves of a tree or by the sound of a drum or something like that. But here, there's no need to think or to sort of ponder like, oh, I'm going to teach. And so although there are those that would say, well, if Buddha doesn't have conceptual thought, then how could he possibly have the thought to teach, or how could he affect these various deeds? Well, then they use the example of like a wish-fulfilling jewel. There's no need for that thing to have thought. Its power is such that by wishing for something, humans are able to get whatever sort of temporary things they might want. There's no motivation there. It has the sort of power. And if we have the right kind of karma and fortune, we too can benefit from that. Or like a wish-fulfilling tree in the divine realms, where you can sort of take whatever you would want from that. And that thought, there's no thought or discursive thought from the side of that tree, but rather it's able to just provide by nature of what it is. And so here, when it comes to as well, like the Buddha, if we have the right kind of conditions, so a Buddha is able to benefit all sentient beings sort of in accordance with their needs, with their dispositions. When the conditions are right, a Buddha is able to affect the needs of beings. Like, whereas in our current situation, we don't have that ability. We might try to like influence one person and we don't really know what they need. We try to teach them or tell them something and they might disagree with us. We might not be able to get it across or whatever. But a Buddha has the ability to affect without any sort of conceptual thought whatever will be most beneficial for beings. And so therefore it's given and this is a result of all of the prayers that a Buddha has made over countless eons to be able to affect this kind of benefit for beings. And so this means that a Buddha is able to effort or sort of non-conceptually, just like a wish-fulfilling jewel or a wish-granting tree that can satisfy our temporary desires. The Buddha, the victors, are considered to be able to fulfill the needs of beings without any sort of conceptual motivation or effort.
Nên đó là những cái sự phi phàm của Đức Phật. Tùy theo cái đệ tử, phước duyên của đệ tử, cho nên họ sẽ cảm ứng và ghi nhận và tiếp nhận được cái điều mà họ mong muốn. Đức Phật vẫn làm lợi ích cho tất cả chúng sinh. Phật tuy rằng Ngài không có tư duy phân biệt, giống như ở đây ví dụ như viên ngọc